Hey, listeners, just a heads up. The following episode has spoilers for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, including spoilers for the book of The Odyssey, which we are reading day to day. Listen with caution. Also, if you want the entirety of today's episode, head on over to patreon.com/gruntworkpod to get the full 1 hour length commentary of my initial impressions of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Thanks. On with the show. Well, hello there, listeners. I know it's been a hot second since we have been on break here. We are coming back shortly. I already have book 11 in the can, ready to go. You might be asking why. Wait. um, I want to make sure that it's edited and scheduled so that I can move forward without skipping any more, running into another issue like this little hiatus we ran into. So just be patient. It'll be out in another week or so, and we will get going. But I wanted to take this opportunity to address the elephant in the room. And by elephant, I definitely mean Cyclops. And by room, I mean cave. We have to discuss the Cyclops in the cave. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey was released this weekend. And despite not getting tickets early on, I was still able to get some pretty good seats for an IMAX showing on Sunday night. Wasn't unfortunately the 70 millimeter, but you know, take what I get here in Madison, Wisconsin. So I thought that I would share with you some thoughts, initial impressions of the movie, and ask that you also share yours with me. I want to just preface this by saying I don't have a single note in front of me. This is all off the dome, just pure, raw, unadulterated initial impressions. I will say I will probably, and I think maybe have a responsibility to see it again. I want to reserve the right to change literally anything I say in this episode. And why should opinions and impressions be static anyway? It's not that I don't stand by what I say. I stand by the experience I had. And each new experience doesn't necessarily, in fact, almost never replicates the first experience. Just take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt and hopefully use it as an invitation to discourse, not digging your heels in argument. I guess before we begin, I should caveat my past with Christopher Nolan. I mean, not a personal past. I don't know the guy personally, but I mean, my experience with his films, I think I was a pretty big fan from Memento all the way through probably Interstellar. And I've had a huge drop off. I'm not going to lie. I was very underwhelmed by a lot of things in Oppenheimer. Tenet was somewhat incomprehensible to me. I did not like The Dark Knight Rises, the third in the Batman movies, but I dig Dunkirk. I really liked both Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I had a really intense experience seeing Inception in the theaters. For my money, The Prestige is still his best movie, though I haven't seen it in a long, long time. And let me rephrase that: best isn't. This is this is what I'm getting to: is that people tend to use the word best; they overstate things. My favorite of his is The Prestige, but I haven't seen it in many years, and would love to actually revisit it. So I'm going into the Odyssey I like to think pretty even-handed. I'm not out on a crusade to take Christopher Nolan down, but, you know, he still has to win me over with each film, as I think any artist should. However, where I do get a little bristly, and I acknowledge this and try to work really hard to set it aside when engaging with any artist's work, is how kind of annoying and irritated I get with the fandom around a person. I'm not going to go into Tarantino here, but that is a good example, probably the prime example. And I tend to think that a lot of people for Christopher Nolan overlook some of his weaker spots in favor of canonizing him as one of the greatest filmmakers. He's a great filmmaker. Do not get me wrong. There's a lot of brilliance in the Odyssey, which we'll get to. But I think if you're going to explore any person's work, it should be from every angle and even handedly across the board. So, as I said, this is going to be a messy episode without any notes in front of me. But I hope you will get something out of it and see how it will inform, if it does at all, our work moving forward on the show. All right. So, with that said, let's get into the Odyssey specifically, shall we? Right out the gate, let's talk about the format of this thing. Shot for IMAX, shot on 70 millimeter. It can get a little eye rolly. I think the discussion around the dedication to shooting on film and shooting for large formats, making sure that the movie going experience is optimal. But I mean, there are very few filmmakers who are dedicated to shooting with that in mind. And therefore, it is a singular experience when you go into something like this sweeping epic and you're able to see these grandiose landscape shots and you're able to take in vistas, large and small, both the landscapes of, the topography, but also someone's face projected, in large scale really can communicate something so much different than watching it on your laptop. I'm not criticizing those who watch things on their laptop. I think that argument tends to dismiss the accessibility question. Not everyone can go to the theater. Not everyone is inclined to go to the theater. And that's okay. That's part of the human existence. And so it's a different experience. We flag it as such. But I don't think it's right to dismiss anyone for watching it in whatever format is available to them. I have my preferences, but I would certainly not prescribe them for everybody. But Nolan wastes no time in setting the visual scope of this story, and it's pretty awe-inspiring. The ambition, the scale of it is unlike a lot of movies made nowadays. And what differentiates it is, yes, you might see something like the average superhero movie coming out every month and get these big, wide, expansive views of a fantasy world, a planet, and they're beautiful in their own right, but they're digitally created. So Nolan's ambition to be able to capture these things not in a studio, but in the world, I think does lend a sort of grounding aspect to the movie throughout. I think the format and canvas in which Nolan chooses to work is one of his strongest suits. He is a very technically proficient director, and you have to have confidence if you're choosing a canvas that big to be able to paint it properly. And for the most part, he succeeds in doing that across the board. What the meaning of those images is might have some future conversation in a bit here, but one of the things that I like to do when I first sit down in a theater is really just work to center myself and set aside any expectations I have for what I'm about to see. And I like to take the first 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes of a movie and let it tell me what it's trying to accomplish, and then judge the rest of the film based on those merits. I'm not always successful at that. I'm human, but that is what I try to do. And so, in watching the beginning of the Odyssey, it for me has an immediate issue that is common to Nolan, which is that it needs to root itself. It sets the goal even for itself to root it in a yearning or emotion for being home and what home represents. And the script, also written by Nolan, tries to do this through Odysseus and Penelope's marriage, their love for each other. Newly born Telemachus. Boy, oh boy, let me tell you, hearing all of these characters' names spoken aloud for the first time really makes me cringe at the beginning of the show and makes me want to re-record everything that I've done so far. But that's neither here nor there. The point being, in order for the rest of the movie to work, in order for you to hook into Odysseus's motivation or um, central theme, we need the emotion of this opening to work. And I think even Nolan's most charitable critics would agree that deep seated emotion isn't exactly his strong suit. Relationships, not 100% what he's best at. You can look at Oppenheimer, you can look at Inception. It's just, not his thing. And that's okay. And that's okay. Um, I would be surprised if he didn't know that himself, which is why he not only focuses on casting the right people in those roles, but lets them contribute to the character in what I presume is not on the page. And so when you get someone like Marianne Cotillard in Inception, or you get someone like Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh in Oppenheimer, um, here you have Anne Hathaway, who, for my money, carries the emotional weight of this movie on her back single-handedly. I'll get into Matt Damon in a little bit, but what is set up in the beginning of the film with her complicated feelings about Odysseus leaving for war, and then carried through, 20 years later, the evolutions of that, the permutations of that, the iterations of that, what she sees in Telemachus, what she sees in the suitors, uh, or wooers, as we call them, um, what she sees in his absence is all carried through Anne Hathaway's performance. Um, and whatever degree the movie works on a emotional level, I think is 100% due to her. And actually, I'm going to flag myself there because I want to be careful about absolute phrases like 100%. I think she's doing an incredibly difficult job having to orient viewers to what the emotion of home, I'm putting those in scare quotes, home represents to Odysseus throughout the film. And so she mostly allows this opening to succeed, though this is where I start to weave in another one of my criticisms of Nolan, which is I think on a technical level, he knows how to shoot, to edit, action scenes, adventure scenes, for the most part. I do have another criticism later in the film about how he chose to shoot and edit a big fight sequence, but to film and edit around emotion and themes is also not a big strong suit of his. And I found a lot of the early editing where they're lying in bed and talking about just being able to escape, and you see these flashes of uh the sea and the sun setting, on the horizon and going back to them in the bed. Maybe it's because, I've been studying film for 30 years of my life and just kind of can recognize when someone is overtly setting up something that they either want to return to or just is a little insecure about audiences understanding what the theme is or what the through line or the emotion of it is. It felt a little ham-fisted to me. It felt a little kind of boilerplate. And so I think the opening 20 or so minutes, 25 minutes, maybe even half hour, really set the stage for me in terms of the rest of the experience I would have with the movie. I realize I'm going to bounce all over the place here, so just bear with me. uh, but I'm gonna return to talking about Matt Damon and what Nolan chose to omit and change, which makes sense and you have to when you're adapting anything. But continue on this thought of the ebbs and flows that I had while watching the film. I think there are some incredible moments of brilliance in this, and there was never any moment of despair, despondency, irritation, really. If anything, it was just like a little, the lows that I had were just a little, slight eye rolly. So it wasn't, I wouldn't even go so far as to say I had an ambivalent experience with this movie. It was mostly positive with some like, oh, okay, well, you chose one of the most basic ways of adapting what could have been a really interesting exploration. So I do tend to fall on the more positive side of things here. I don't want to have this episode sound like I'm just pulling it apart. Some of the really brilliant sequences, I think, are a lot of, not all of, but most of Polyphemus in his cave. Nolan so rarely goes into psycho freak mode, but when he does, he can have a really chilling effect. He chooses to depict Polyphemus as a kind of uncanny liminal space creature. His face is kind of distorted like a Picasso painting, and his skin is chalky and looks otherworldly. And he chooses to shoot this with a live person using perspective tricks, which is a really old school way of filming, and then just augmenting it with a computer generated eye for Polyphemus. One of the things I think is really brilliant is his casting of Bill Irwin as Polyphemus. If you are unfamiliar with the name Bill Irwin, you might know him by face. He is a character actor. He's a well-known comedian and clown. If you've seen the music video for "Don't Worry, Be Happy," where him and Robin Williams are dancing around with Bobby McFerrin for some reason. Um, that's where I was probably introduced to him, but he's been around for forever, and he had previously worked with Christopher Nolan on Interstellar, but in a very interesting capacity because he was the voice of and the puppetry for the robot that was on the ship with them that went to the different surfaces of the planets. So, um, Christopher Nolan seems to be able to know how to tap into Bill Irwin as a choreographer and a clown in order to get that physicality. And Nolan takes a interesting approach here that at the introduction of it, I was a little like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this, but it ultimately ended up being a positive for me, which is he shoots Polyphemus in a slightly slower fashion than he does Odysseus and his crew. Almost as if he's like walking underwater or something. His voice is very underwater-esque as well when he does choose to speak. He doesn't speak very much, and that's a choice they made. But ultimately, what I love about the scene is that it ends up feeling like this nightmare. You're trapped in this black cave where you can't see the boundaries of your environment with a monster that looks like it's some sort of distorted visage out of your uncanny valley, and terror lurks from every shadow, even though this thing is massive. I mean, I definitely have nightmares where it's incredibly dark and there's a massive thing after me and I can't see it at all. It seems counterintuitive, but that's a thing. And I think Nolan captures that well. The other two scenes that I think really uh, showcase an incredible um, execution of a vision is when he goes to Hades, which we are about to read in the book when we pick back up. This incredible sequence of all of the shades of fallen warriors arise, and he talks to Sinon and Tiresias to get the prophecy of how to return home. And eventually he speaks to Agamemnon as well. This scene, I think, captures the epitome of the movie because he's shooting on a real location in Iceland, getting that kind of ethereal midnight sun look on, the black shores, and witnessing all of the what they are called shades arise, and Tiresias looking like he's crawling out from the underworld, keeping his eyes shielded by this shroud, in a kind of symbolic gesture of him having the ability to see the prophecies and stuff. It's really, really well put together. Even when he speaks to Agamemnon and everyone kind of parts ways and he comes forth and asks Odysseus questions about his kingdom and gives Odysseus advice on how to get home, or at least what to do when he gets home. It's chilling. It's visually arresting. It demonstrates some of the key changes that Nolan has made for the movie, as you will see when we pick back up, which this is the scene that comes next. Happens very differently. I mean, well, I won't spoil it for you, but we get a kind of murderer's row of Greek mythology figures to look forward to when we read the thing. But Sinon, played by Elliot Page, is not in the Odyssey. That character was created by Virgil for the Aeneid. So Nolan is pulling from multiple places, but I'll get back to that in just a second. And honestly, it's, I think, going to be one of the scenes that stick with me most long after I've seen the movie. And then the third, I think, is the one that everyone is pointing to, which is the Samantha Morton as Circe scene, where she turns all of the men into pigs. This is where I want to be a little careful. If you want the entirety of today's episode, head on over to patreon.com/gruntworkpod to get the full 1 hour length commentary of my initial impressions of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.